Bionicle Legends 2 Dark Destiny. Written by Greg Farshti. Recording by Nemetron. Chapter 7. Harley looked around at her 5 friends, now both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. Each had been given a new mask by Kazani in place of the ones they had surrendered. Kongu had been quick enough to ditch the one he was handed and put on the Kanohi Sulatu the party had been carrying. The rest were stuck with what they were given, and chose not to ask to whom the masks had once belonged. Karzani beamed at them like a proud crafter seeing his creation for the first time.
Far better. Who you once were does not matter, you see. Now you are here, and so you become whoever I want you to be.
Jala said nothing, just stared at the ground, a grim expression on his face. Kongu too was silent. He had attempted to run away earlier. His punishment had been to see what would have happened had he continued to defy the Dark Hunters on Metronui 1,000 years before. Multiple abrupt changes in the flow of a transport chute could do very interesting things to a Matoran body, as he discovered to his distress. "So what now?" asked Tuparu. "Lock us up? Kill us? Turn us into one of these empty shell Matoran you have walking around?"
These empty shells have been with me for over 1,000 centuries, toiling away for the day once like you would return,
Kazani replied, so softly he could barely be heard.
Now you are here, and no doubt are but the first of many. The furnaces must be stoked, the tools made ready, and to do that, I need fresh workers. You will relieve them of their duties and wait for the legions to come.
Huki smiled to himself. They would be alive, and they would have access to tools. That was all he needed to know. Put a hammer or a chisel in his hands, and he would fight his way out of this place in no time.
You will go and tend the fires now. All except this one, Kazani said, pointing to Harley. I heard you call yourself a chronicler. You are a keeper of histories?
Yes, the Gamatoran responded. I record the triumphs of the Toa Nuva.
Toa Nuva?
Kazani said, a trace of wonder in his voice.
All these new terms. The world outside must have changed much since I came here. You will remain with me and teach me about the new world, so that I may more efficiently expand my realm.
I would tell you where you can go, but I think we are already there, Harley shot back in reply. I stay with my friends. Kazani shook his head sadly.
Such spirit. It would be a shame to snap it like a twig. I could show you horrors, Matoran, that would render you a mindless, screaming hawk. Will your friends show you the same loyalty when you are a gibbering lunatic? Or will they turn away in disgust? It might be interesting to find out.
Don't, Harley, said Huki. Your sacrifice won't help anyone. We'll be all right. Harley looked at Jala. The Tamatoran nodded. All right then, said the chronicler. I'll teach you more than you want to know, Kazani. I'll explain to you exactly how this kingdom of yours will be brought to ruin the instant the Toa arrive, and I hope you choke on the knowledge. The hours crawled by. The 5 Matoran had been tending the giant furnace, a furnace so huge that it made Metrunui's legendary one seem puny in comparison. They had expected the former laborers at the site to drift away once they were relieved, but instead they sat on rocks and watched the newcomers with the barest flickers of interest. At least the fire's hot, said Huki. Something works the way it should around here. What do you think he needs this thing for? Asked Matoro. Do you think it's for... No, said Jala, cutting him off. I don't. Kongu looked around. Hey, where's Nuparu? Did anyone see him wander off? Does anyone ever? Asked Huki. But he should know better than to look for things to tinker with around here. The tools might bite his hand off or something. Guys!
Nuparu came running down a slope from the north.
You need to see this. Now! Holly paused to take a breath. She had been talking almost non-stop since the others left, with Karzani only occasionally interrupting with questions. She made a point of detailing the Toa Nuva's great powers and how they had triumphed over so many powerful foes. Maybe he'll get the hint, she thought.
Go on, he urged. There must be more.
I think it's your turn, Holly replied. As you said, it is my job to write histories. I would like to know yours. Karzani gave a slight smile.
It would take most of your lifespan to relate all that I have experienced, Matoran. I was one of the first creations of the great beings, I and my brother. I was given a land of my own to rule, and so was he. I chose to make it a place where those who had transgressed could find redemption, or punishment. Or perhaps that was chosen for me.
Holly waited for him to continue, surprised that he seemed honestly confused.
Sometimes I remember it one way, sometimes another, he said with a shrug. My brother chose to name his land Artaka, and make it a refuge for Matoran.
Wait, interrupted Holly. There is a Matoran legend about a place called Artaka, a land where Matoran can be safe from all harm. Are you saying this place really exists?
It is as real as the rock you are sitting on, he replied. Which, by the way, is an action you might want to rethink.
Holly looked down to see that her legs had slowly begun transforming to stone. At the same time, the rock had begun to squirm, as if taking on life. With a cry, she bolted up and ran several paces away from her former seat.
After a few moments, the process reversed itself.
A very effective way to combat laziness, said Karzani. Those who prefer to sit around all day unmoving as a stone eventually become one.
Then those stone statues of Matoran we saw on the way in were...
Formerly willful and disobedient Matoran, he finished for her. Now fulfilling a valuable role as examples of the consequences of such behavior.
You're insane.
I prefer the term creative, Karzani replied. Though I suppose there is not much difference between the two in the end, is there?
So what did you find? Asked Kongu. A new kind of bowl driver? A really great wrench? Look for yourself, answered Nuparu. He had led them into a vaulted chamber that looked as if no one but their little group had entered it in centuries. It was immediately obvious to Huki's eyes that this had once been a busy crafting center, though he had no clue what they might have made here. Whatever it was, they were making a lot of it, he thought. Look at the size of this place. Nuparu had walked all the way to the back of the chamber and pulled open a sliding door. Inside were a series of long tables, with stone tablets scattered about on top of them. Piled in the corners were dust-covered pieces of armor. The Onumatoran pointed to one of the tablets. I found this. It shows a Matoran, one resembling us, being rebuilt. Even some of the organic tissue is being replaced. And see here? When they were done, he was smaller and thinner. Then the writing on the tablet trails off. Parts have even been scraped away. He searched briefly and grabbed a second tablet. Here, the same Matoran, only this time with tools, items that can double as weapons. Then here he is, along with hundreds of others, being transported somewhere. I don't get it, said Kongu. What does this have to do with anything? If I'm reading this correctly, something is really wrong here, and has been for century upon century, Nuparu said, excitement in his voice. Remember the legend? Matoran who were poor workers were sent here, but why was never explained in any of the tales. Don't you see? Karzani wasn't supposed to imprison or punish them. He was supposed to repair them. Matoro took a closer look at the image of the Matoran carved into the tablet. He didn't do a very good job, did he? That's the point, said Nuparu. He didn't. To compensate, he gave them weapons they could use to defend themselves. And then he adopted other methods to fix Matoran sent to him. And we have seen the results of that. He could have made them better, stronger, more efficient, the same way that Turaga did with us. But he chose another path. When the Matoran sent here never returned, they stopped being sent, said Jala. He has been waiting 100,000 years for Matoran who never came, until we showed up. Lucky us, muttered Kongu. We have to get Harley and get out of here, said Huki.
When he realizes there aren't any more coming, he might decide to fix us.
Question, said Matoro. I have never seen Matoran who looked like this. Certainly there were none of Matanui. Where are they? Wherever he sent them so they would be out of his sight, Nuparu answered. And wherever it is, I hope they are happy and at peace. Garen shook his head in wonder. He had spent the last few hours talking with Onua Nuva, sharing tales of their respective lands. What the Tour of Earth had to say was quite amazing. An island called Matanui, swarms of Borak, and even more amazing, taller, stronger Matoran who carried tools, but not weapons. Stunning, he said to himself. How would a Matoran survive without the kind of power we have? They would be at the mercy of every Rahi that came along.
Well, I hope wherever those poor unfortunates are, they are managing to be happy.
Personally, I'll take pulse bolts over a little more muscle any day. End of chapter 7.